Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at a brand new top meta threat in the Open Master League, Rhyperior. Rhyperior's move Mudslap got buffed twice. Its fast move does more damage and generates more energy. And that extra energy generation, faster access to Rock Wrecker, catapults Rhyperior into the echelon of top Master League meta, as it has play into just about any Pokemon that you can encounter except Kyogre. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's take a look at me testing out Rhyperior in some practice Master League battles for the very first time. Hopping into the first match, picking up a tough lead Rhyperior into Landorus. Landorus did get nerfed this season with the Mudshot rework. Well, reworked would be the more correct term there, as Mudshot now has worse energy generation, but does slightly more damage. Opponent is going to stay into the Zacian save switch, and I'm very okay with that. They're going to fire off their energy. Sandsear Storm is going to get me quite low. I'm going to try and commit to the play rough, but I actually get farmed down there. And that's a little bit of the unfamiliarity with the matchups on my part, as I wasn't 100% sure if I could actually get the play rough. Now I know for the future, I can just go for the wild charge and still get them pretty low. I'm going to bring in Palkia. At this point, the opponent will be able to choose the alignment that they want for this game. In the back, they send out Dialga, and Dialga is going to get hit with a debuff Spatial Rend. Spatial Rend will connect. It's going to be a switch. I send in Rhyperior, they send in Palkia, and Rhyperior now has a winning matchup versus Palkia in the 2-shield. Yes, you did not hear that incorrectly. Rhyperior, a ground and rock type, beats Palkia, a Pokemon that has a very cheap water charge move in the 2-shield, because Rhyperior can now simply outpace. Opponent knows they lose the 2-shield, so they are just going to let the second Breaking Swipe through. I'm going to commit to a farm down. In comes Dialga, and this should just be a 1 game. They can't farm me down even if I don't get a debuff before I make another Breaking Swipe. I actually get the debuff there. I'm going to be able to make it to another Breaking Swipe. They're forced to throw energy. Even if I didn't debuff, I would have been able to make that move. And look at the damage. The combination of damage output and energy generation on Rhyperior is just absolutely absurd now. Hopping into the next match, leading Rhyperior into Xerneas, and this is actually a fine lead for Rhyperior. Rock Wrecker used to be 6 to the first, and you'd have to throw 3 before you'd get a 5 cycle. Now, Rock Wrecker is always straight 5. Close combat is survivable for Rhyperior, but I decided to shield up the first as I do want to preserve some health. They are going to shield up the Rock Wrecker, opponent firing off energy before I'm able to get my next Rock Wrecker. I will shield up the close combat, opponent going to save switch into a Shadow Rhyperior. Shadow Rhyperior I do think is slightly better than the regular. Unfortunately, I just don't have a buildable Shadow. I'm going to launch Breaking Swipe after Breaking Swipe. My opponent is going to be forced to throw a Breaking Swipe of their own, so I may as well catch it after getting the Breaking Swipe debuff on a Zacian, where it's going to be double resisted. And now I'm going to look for a farm down. They're going to make the Rock Wrecker, and keep in mind, this is a debuffed Shadow Rock Wrecker, and it still absolutely destroys Zacian. Zacian barely hanging on, wild charging as the opponent quickly switches in the Xerneas, and in the back is Palkia. Palkia going to get hit with a wild charge, and then I'm going to be switching out into my own Palkia. I can make the Aqua Tail 1 turn before they make the Spatial Rend. Even though this is double resisted, I just need as much damage as I can possibly get here, so I will go for the Aqua Tail. Opponent Spatial Rends instantly. They don't want to take any additional damage. I did save some energy on my Rhyperior, so I'm going to bring in the Rhyperior. I make it to the Breaking Swipe. This is going to be KOing the Palkia. And all the opponent has left in the back is their own Rhyperior. Zacian still alive in the back for me, so this game is a win. Picking up a tricky lead in the next match, Rhyperior versus Zygarde. I'm going to look to farm up a lot of energy as Rhyperior, try for a potential catch. I don't get the catch, and my Zacian save switch is going to be answered with an opposing Rhyperior. I'm not running close combat on Zacian. I think now that Rhyperior is as strong as it is, there is definitely a case to be made for potentially running close combat. I was just on Wild Charge play rough, and I really want to try and preserve my TMs. I'm going to commit to the play rough, and I just get there. Zacian barely hanging on. Shout out to the perfect IV Zacian, as it's able to make that play rough and deal some very important damage. I bring in my own Rhyperior. I'm just going to no shield. I can tank a Breaking Swipe. Opponent goes for the harder hitting Rock Wrecker, and it's a simultaneous switch. I bring in Palkia, and my opponent brings in Primarina. At first, I thought I was in a terrible spot, But then I realized this Waterfall, and Waterfall Primarina actually loses to Palkia. I'm going to be firing off Aqua Tail after Aqua Tail in this matchup. Spatial Rend does do ever so slightly more damage, but Spatial Rend is a lot less efficient. So I will go for the Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail is going to get them low. I still don't think a Spatial Rend would have KO'd. I still think they would have been able to survive on 1 HP. Moonblast is going to be shielded. Back in comes the Zygarde. I'm expecting them to throw 1 in the Earthquake. So I'm going to throw 2 Dragon Breath, switch, and get a CMP Sack Swap. We catch the move, we win Charge Attack Priority, and catching the Earthquake should win me this game. But it's a crunch. They crunched. I didn't have any shields, but they threw a crunch. And that completely messes up my plans, as now they have the residual energy to actually damage Palkia. Oh, that is so unfortunate. They get to land the Earthquake. In comes Rhyperior, and I just can't win this game anymore. If I caught the Earthquake, that game is a win. But unfortunately, my opponent crunched, and without catching the Earthquake, I did not have a win con. Core Breaker in the next match, Rhyperior versus Gyarados. I'm going to bank a Breaking Swipe, safe switch into Zacian. Gyarados banks energy, out comes Landorus. Landorus is still around. I just think there's a lot more competition for the role of best meta ground type because Rhyperior is so neutrally terrifying now. Opponent is going to shield up the first because they do want to apply Sandsear Storm debuffs. That's very okay. They could throw another one here, but instead they're going to look to get a bunch of residual energy on the Landorus. I'm going to fire off the Play Rough. Play Rough is going to connect. They can knock me out with the Sandsear. I'm okay with that. I'm just going to get a bunch of farm on Palkia. Opponent undercharges the Sandsear. They try for a snipe with the Gyarados, hoping to get energy, but instead, my Zacian makes the wild charge, forces the shield, and now I'm in a pretty decent position. I bring in Rhyperior, I shield up the double super effective Aqua Tail, and I just want this Gyarados gone. Gyarados is a very awkward Pokemon for this team, so I full send the Rock Wrecker, one-hit KO the Gyarados, and if they bring in Landorus, their switch timer will not be available, but mine is. So I can just switch in the Palkia, absorb this energy, and look to try and farm down. Because once this Landorus is out of the way, it should be smooth sailing for Rhyperior. Opponent's Claw comes up at the last possible second. It's a Sucker Punch of Veltal in the back. I fire off the debuff Spatial Rend. A Veltal tanking that pretty comfortably. They will be able to force a shield, as I can't really mud slap down a flying type. So I'm going to shield, fire off the Aqua Tail, and Aqua Tail should just about knock out here. But I have a better idea. An undercharge and a mud slap down. In comes the Landorus. Landorus is going to make a move. A terrible frame drop there. The game on Android is really rough to play right now. But the good news is, frame drop or not, we still get the win. And this Pokemon is an auto loss for this team. Rhyperior into Tapu Bulu. I put together a Rhyperior team. I was like, this looks great on paper. There has to be something that I'm missing. And leading into a Tapu Bulu, I realized, oh, this team gets swept by Tapu Bulu. They farm up to a Solar Beam. I'm not going to respect it even if they have it. It's just a Nature's Madness. And my opponent is going to bring in their own Rhyperior. I'm going to farm up so much energy with the Zacian, firing off the Play Rough. Will the opponent respect it with a shield? No, they will not. And I'm going to bring in my own Rhyperior. I do see potential to try and win this game. A big farm down from my Rhyperior will put me in a position where I'm up energy, and up energy, a Rock Wrecker can actually threaten the Tapu Bulu. So Tapu Bulu should be an auto loss, but with this energy, this is very playable. I'm going to fire off a Breaking Swipe bait. The Bullet Seed does go through. Breaking Swipe bait gets the shield to switch into the Palkia. That will be a Nature's Madness. I'm forced to shield, and now I'm going to be debuffed until my switch clock comes up. It's a Galarian Moltres in the back, also on Sucker Punch. This is only enough for an Ancient Power. They only did 7 Sucker Punches, so I get to no shield. I'm going to farm up so much energy, going for a Spatial Rend, hoping to try and pick up the knockout. Spatial Rend does get shielded, and that means, unfortunately, I can't make another Spatial Rend. I can only get the Aqua Tail. I still see a win con, though. Mud Slap down Galar Moltres, and I can win this game because I'm going to have a Rock Wrecker available for that Tapu Bulu. Come on, Rhyperior. They switch out into the Tapu Bulu, and they get the Bullet Seed through. It doesn't KO, but it puts me in 1 Sucker Punch range. Perfectly executed endgame there from my opponent. We see a very familiar lead in the next match, Rhyperior versus Xerneas. I'm going to throw the Rock Wrecker on 7. because this is charge attack priority to Xerneas getting back-to-back close combats. This way, they can't tank a Rock Wrecker, then throw a double close combat. They're going to have to give this shield back. So I get the shield back, which is awesome. They're going to close combat. I'm going to let this through. Opponent is going to be switching out after this because their defense is 4 stages debuffed. Out comes an astonished Tapu Lele. Oh my goodness. Honestly, I forgot this Pokemon had Astonish. Unfortunately, I don't have a Master League Tapu Lele. I did not get the XLs for that. But very cool to see people testing out some of these buffed Pokemon. The Play Rough lands. That does significant damage to the Tapu Lele. Tapu Lele forced to fire off energy as I would have been able to make a Wild Charge. Nature's Madness will pick up the knockout. I'm going to bring in the Palkia. Look for the farm down. Palkia just able to get that farm down, denying energy from Tapu Lele. And hopefully, energy on this Palkia will be very valuable. In comes Xerneas. Xerneas going to be hit with an Aqua Tail. This will not KO, however. Xerneas is barely able to hang on. Xerneas now going to be hit with another Aqua Tail. They now have the energy for the Moonblast. I can just shield it and farm down. They switch, hoping that I try and go for a catch. And that was basically their win con there. Was hoping that I tried to go for a catch and they could get a bunch of energy. But unfortunately, I don't go for the catch. And realistically, they weren't going to be able to get a double up here. Like Moonblast, they actually get an attack drop. And even with the attack drop, I do still get that farm down. Bit of an interesting lead in the next match. Rhyperior versus Yveltal. Yveltal does have a small pacing disadvantage, but even so, I'm going to go for the bait. I'm feeling a bit risky. Rock Wrecker is very threatening. I get the shield and I get the debuff. That is terrific. Honestly, since it's debuffed, I could let it go. I decide to shield. I'm going to throw one and watch for the catch. There is the catch attempt onto Necrozma, and I'm going to bring in Palkia. Palkia, I suddenly realize they farmed up to 8. I might get outraged here, and I do, but the Palkia hangs on with 1 HP. Oh no, disaster strikes. I get the Aqua Tail, but now this is really uncomfortable. I can get a huge farm down with the Zacian, but Zacian is going to have to shield up a Sunsteel Strike. The good news is I have so much energy on the Rhyperior, so I should be able to get rid of Yveltal later in the match as needed. Opponent is going to switch in Landorus, and with Palkia gone, this Landorus is now going to be a bit of a concern. They will fire off the Sandsear Storm. Sandsear Storm going to do a decent amount of damage, and here I should have overfarmed more. I shouldn't have just done one of the move. I could have overfarmed more. I realized the mistake. I try and undercharge. I can't undercharge, and then here I needed to commit to a Play Rough. Because a debuff Wild Charge won't KO, I switch. I accidentally throw a Mud Slap. I tried to click the move, but it throws the Mud Slap, and throwing the Mud Slap loses me this game because that Sucker Punch that went through will KO, losing all this energy. This game was so winnable. The team didn't let me down. Unfortunately, just spending all day flying home from Baltimore, I was a little bit tired, and I ended up misplaying. Hopping into the final match, what an unbelievable lead. That is so unfortunate for the opponent. Rhyperior into Heatran. They save switch into Palkia. I can stay in with Rhyperior and win the 2 shield, but since they're not going to shield, I'm just going to switch out. I have Zacian. Zacian can survive charge attacks for days here, and I can look to build up to a double Wild Charge. Unfortunately, we do get a frame drop there. The game state, I mentioned it earlier, on Android is so bad right now. I do get the double up on Wild Charges, which is great, because this way I get some guaranteed damage into the Heatran. The Heatran's not going to really be able to do anything in this match anyway, but I'll take the damage that I can get, and my opponent gets 1 turn lag. They actually don't get the fast move through that they should have, so I'm going to wait here. I'm going to let the Fire Spin go through, so I only get 1 Snarl, and now in the back, it will be Xerneas. They're behind by a turn, so I can farm up to the Rock Wrecker, and I'm going for a Breaking Swipe bait. This is a pretty devious bait. We get the debuff as well, so the bait ends up paying off. And now Rhyperior is in such good positioning. The Moonblast is going to be shielded up. I'm full sending the Rock Wrecker now. I have an advantage, and I want to try and sweep here. The Rock Wrecker will be shielded. Opponent has so much energy on this Xerneas. I will commit the shield, and I think I'm just going to look to switch out. So I'm going to switch out, and we do have pretty close to a simul switch here. Palkia into the Heatran as both of us try and catch. I just really didn't want them to catch, and this way I can play it very safely. I can just build up to back-to-back Aqua Tails because they have to throw their energy instantly if they don't want this Aqua Tail to be thrown. And if they don't throw their energy instantly, then I just get the knockout. So in this instance, my opponent realizes they need more energy than they can get. Aqua Tail KOs, and that is a good game. All in all, Rhyperior, it is tremendous. The Shadow Rhyperior actually wins the 1 shield and the 2 shield versus Palkia. The regular only wins the 2s, but getting more damage and more energy means that, honestly, for the first time in quite some time, it feels like there is a top meta threat that is a free-to-play Pokemon. There's been some very good free-to-play Pokemon, but power creep, especially with the origin forms and with the Necrozmas being released, has definitely added up over time. But my goodness, playing Rhyperior and getting to test it out today, it felt unbelievable to use. Mud Slap is just an unimaginably strong fast move. The fast move pressure melts through Dialga. You actually can 1 shield farm down Dialga Origin now. Unfortunately, I didn't get any footage, but if you lead Rhyperior into Dialga, you don't have to throw a charge move. You can shield once, you can Mud Slap all the way down, exit with 100 energy loaded basically, and just shred whatever they have in the back. So this went from a pretty solid option to a Pokemon that honestly I think we're going to be seeing on a lot of teams, because Rhyperior is just incredibly strong in this new max out Master League meta. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.